friends, it's Corey from Hey Let's Make Stuff, and in this video we are talking all about t-shirt rulers. So this is basically the battle of the t-shirt ruler. I have 4 different t-shirt rulers here today, and I'm going to be testing them so we can figure out which one is best. I'm going to start off by being completely honest and say that I normally just eyeball any kind of decal that I'm putting on a shirt, a tote bag, a pillow, or anything like that. I am just not one to use a ruler, so it was kind of fun for me to learn how to use all of these different rulers because I know there are so many of you out there that are just not good at eyeballing things, and that's totally fine to have a little bit of help. So as you can see, I have so much on my desk today, so let's get into it. To start, I have a freebie for you. So this is a free printable t-shirt placement guide, and you can go ahead and download this from my craft library. I'm going to link to it down in the description below. But when you print this out, it gives you the different sizes for the decals you might want to put on t-shirts, and it goes from everything from baby to adult, and then it tells you how far down from the collar that you want to place your decal. A lot of these rulers don't tell you how far down to place it, so you're definitely going to want to grab this so that you will have a guide on where to actually put that decal. You might want to print this out, laminate it, put it by your computer or your heat press so that you always have access to know what size your decal should be and where to put them on your shirt. Let's get into the 4 rulers we're going to be using today. First up are these plastic rulers that you see everywhere. So this is the adult front version of this ruler. I have 6 other rulers here. So this comes in what is called a 9-pack, but there are only 7 rulers here. This pack also came with some yellow heat resistant tape, which I suggest you put directly into the trash can because that yellow tape can leave marks on your clothing. I just don't recommend yellow tape ever. And then also a cheap tape measure. So technically 9 pieces, only 7 rulers. So this is the adult piece. There's also an adult back piece. There's also another piece that is exactly this shape, but it shows you where to put pocket decals. Then there is a youth front and back, a toddler front, and a baby front. And I think that's all the pieces of these that we have. These are very popular. Mine are clear, but you can also buy opaque versions of them. You can also make your own versions of them. I know several bloggers who have different versions of these that you can actually cut out and make out of cardstock or out of some kind of plastic on your Cricut. You can also buy the SVG for them over on Etsy. But these are widely accessible and not very expensive. Moving from the cheapest option directly to the most expensive option is the T-square ruler. So this I've seen used by quite a few professionals. It definitely is a high quality product. So it has this T piece here and then a crossbar piece here. Of course, I'll go in to show you how to use these in just a moment. And then it also comes with this piece here, which helps you place logos on a pocket. Again, this is the most expensive option. It's over $50 for this ruler, so I definitely wanted to test it so that you could decide whether or not it's worth spending that money. And then next up is this sort of knockoff T-square ruler. It has one of those Amazon names where they just throw a bunch of letters together to make a name, and this one is Upthou, E-P-T-T-H-O-W. I'm just gonna call it the Upthou ruler because I have no idea how to pronounce that. And it comes in 3 pieces. So it has the vertical piece, and then you have to add the horizontal piece here, just like this. And then this piece becomes the crossbar piece, just like this. So this ruler is cheaper, but I've got some issues with it that we're gonna talk about. And then finally, I just have this little L-shaped ruler. This is specifically for placing logos on the front pocket of a t-shirt or in the front pocket area of a t-shirt. So we'll go ahead and use this as well. This won't work for placing, big decals on shirts, but it is an option if you are just doing those pocket decals. Now, it would be helpful just to show you these rulers on one t-shirt, but of course, I'm going above and beyond and I'm showing you on 4 different garments here. So the 4 different garments I have are all from Bella Canvas. And again, if you've been here any length of time, you know I love Bella Canvas. They have a really wonderful program called their Makers Account, which allows you to buy garments at wholesale pricing without a reseller license. Stop paying retail, go to their site. I will go ahead and link it below so that you can sign up for their program. It's totally free and you can get their garments at a much better price. So to start, I have this medium pink unisex tee. This is going to be the tee that I use to show you basically how to use each of the rulers, and then we'll show quickly how to use them on these other garments. So next up is a kid's medium tri-blend tee. This is so soft. I love their tri-blend line. They are just absolutely so soft. My boys love these t-shirts. And then I've got a kid's baby bodysuit. I think this is 6 to 12 months. So it's quite the range depending on the size of your baby. But you want those decals to be straight as well. And these rulers should work on small garments like this. So we're gonna use that one. And then finally, I have a racerback tank. So they don't actually make this color in this silhouette anymore. This has been in my stash for a while, but they do have other colors of this particular silhouette. I wanted to show What happens if you don't have a traditional scoop neck? So this has much wider neck and it doesn't have sleeves. So there are some things that you may want to do different. Do these rulers work with this type of garment? We will find out. And then for each of these shirts, I have a t-shirt decal. So they're sized properly according to that printout that I showed you earlier. I also have a little pocket decal because a lot of these rulers help you also place a pocket decal. A few other things you may want to have on hand are a piece of parchment paper. This really makes using these rulers much easier, so this is highly recommended. And then you can use heat-resistant tape, or you can just use painter's tape. Basically, we're going to be placing these decals on our shirts on the table, and then we're going to need to transfer that to the heat press. And sometimes those decals don't stick, they shift. So just using a little bit of tape to get it from the table to the heat press can help keep your decal exactly where you want it. This brings me to the question, can I use a t-shirt ruler in a heat press? And the answer is yes. So if you are finding that easier to use the t-shirt ruler inside the heat press, more power to you. For this tutorial, I thought it would just be easier to show you through the overhead camera here how to use these rulers not in the heat press. I also find using the rulers sometimes a little bit difficult in the heat press because the seams are hanging off the edges, and a lot of these rulers have you measuring by the seams. So if your seams are draped over the edge or over the back, you can't see what you're doing. So generally I would say use the table, but if you're moving quickly and you've got it down to a science, go ahead and use the rulers in your heat press. All right, first up we have the plastic t-shirt rulers. So I think these are pretty easy to use. It has you place the center here in the center of your shirt. The problem is, what is the center? You could kind of guess, like I would say maybe here's the center, but you know, who knows? The tag isn't necessarily sewn on perfectly straight. The collar may not be straight. So how do you find the center of your shirt? This is actually pretty easy. So all you're going to do is you're going to fold your shirt in half like this, and we're going to find the center of our shirt. So I line up the sleeves under the armpit here. I line up the top part of the sleeves here, and I line up the collar just like this. And then I line up the side seam all the way down, just like this. Make sure just everything's lined up. Then I want you to use your heat press, your easy press, just to do a quick press along this edge here, and that will show us where the center of our garment is. All right, I have my folded t-shirt here on my mat, and I'm gonna go ahead and just press this line for 10 to 15 seconds, because again, this counts as our pre-press. So I'm just gonna press it here, and move it down and press it down a little bit because I'm not quite sure how tall our t-shirt decal is going to be. And then when I open my garment, you can see that I have this nice center line to work from. So I'm gonna grab my t-shirt ruler here. I'm gonna place this on that center line, just like this. And that helps me know that I have my ruler centered. So you'll notice that the tag itself is not centered here. This is not a good accurate way to center a t-shirt. So we're gonna go ahead and use this center line to center our decal. All right, now I'm gonna place my decal. You want the top edge of your decal to be at the bottom edge of the ruler, and you want it to be evenly centered. So I have on both sides it going past the 4.5 inch line here, just a little bit here as well, having the center here. It's lined up with the bottom edge of this ruler. Now, if you have a round decal, it gets a little bit harder, but that's how you use this centering. You can actually fold your decal in half so that you can follow that center line of your decal all the way down the center line of your shirt. Now, because my decal is square, I'm not gonna do that for this, but you can fold this in half. Just give it a little bit of a crease. It's not gonna ruin your decal, I promise, but that will help if you have sort of an oddly shaped decal that you're just like, that top line is not the line to line it up, but that can really help get your decal on straight. Then I will just remove my ruler. Again, if you want, you can use a couple small pieces of painter's tape or heat resistant tape just to get it to your heat press. You don't even need to leave them there while you press, but you don't want this to shift in the move from your table to your heat press. The youth t-shirt is set up the same way. The biggest difference here is something I wanted to show you, that the ruler itself is clear and the writing is black, and the shirt I'm using is black, which can make it a little bit difficult to read these measurements. So if you have difficulty with your vision or those sorts of things, you may want two sets of rulers, one set for light shirts and one set for dark shirts, just to make it a little bit easier to read when you're using dark fabrics. The baby ruler is also similar. You'll notice that the ruler here does not at all line up with the shape of the collar up here, but it works just fine. You'll also see that this is only about 1 inch from the top here. So this ruler has you putting the decal much higher up on the shirt, and that's totally fine. That's actually similar to what the numbering I have on that t-shirt decal placement printout is. It's about 1 inch down. You can go as low as 1/2 inch. So if you wanted to, you could lower this down just a bit. And then we have the racerback tee, which is kind of the wild card here. So I have the ruler set to the bottom of the collar here with the decal here. This is probably fine. With the scoop neck of this racerback, I may actually move this decal up just a bit. So I may move it up closer to here, hold it, and then pull that ruler out. And again, tape. Just because it is such a scoop neck, I don't really want that decal really low. I want it up a little bit higher. So when you're using a ruler with something that's just not quite a normal shirt shape, you may need to just use your best judgment to figure out where that decal should go. And then finally, for these plastic rulers, there is a ruler that allows you to put a pocket decal on. So this is different than the ruler that we used before because it has these lines for the pockets. There's no toddler pocket decal, there's only an adult one here. So I'm gonna go ahead and line it up on that center line that I can barely see now, just like this. I'm gonna grab my little pocket decal. And you basically want your pocket decal to be sort of centered on either side of this left pocket line. Now what I really wish what they had done with this ruler is actually put the numbering out from that center pocket line, because then it would be much easier to center. But they did not do that, so we're just gonna do our best here. I think that's about centered. You can go in and measure, you know, more closely if you'd like, but I'm gonna put my pocket decal there. I'm gonna take this off. And this feels pretty good to me. You'll see with some of the other rulers where I'm like, I don't know, that seems too high or it seems too close to the armpit, but this one here seems about where a pocket decal should be. So my overall review for these first rulers is they are pretty good. They work pretty well if you can get that center crease. I will note that if you want to use dark fabrics, you might want to have another set that has lighter colored writing because there's a whole bunch of different options out there, just because it can be a little hard to read on this particular brand on dark shirts. I'm also noticing that some of the coding on here is starting to come up, and in some of the reviews it does say that the writing and markings on here do start to fade after a while, so that is something to keep in mind. But at a pretty low price point, they're pretty easy to replace. Next up is this kind of pricey T-square ruler. This is the instructions that come with the T-square ruler. I wouldn't say they were the most helpful ever, because I still feel like there are some markings that are a little unclear on here, and I'll go into that when I'm putting this down on the shirt here in a second. But it does have this parchment paper trick, which I've decided is one of the best things I've learned this entire time about using a ruler. So if you have your t-shirt decal on a shirt and then you put a heavy ruler on it, moving it around shifts the fabric and it's really annoying. So instead, if you put a piece of parchment paper down and then you put your t-shirt decal on top of it, you can move it around without disturbing that fabric. And this is amazing. I love this little hack. So we are gonna go ahead and use that hack while working on this shirt. So I'm gonna put this first piece here, and we have two sets of arrows here at the top. So we they want us to align these top arrows with this top collar plate seam and the bottom arrows with the bottom of the collar. So this helps us kind of align with the collar here, just like this. Now, I find this kind of difficult because this collar doesn't, it curves. So I'm like, do I want these arrows to be up here? Do I want these arrows to be here? Do I want, I think it depends on how far you want your decal down. Honestly, I'm not really sure. So I just try and make it even on both sides. And I really like this 1-inch mark here to be at the bottom of this collar plate. I find that that is the easiest way for me to figure out where I need to put my t-shirt decal instead of having some sort of like half measurement here. So I kind of put this one here, and then I try and line up these arrows so that they at least look like they are straight on the collar piece. And then we add our crossbar piece. Now there is a little piece here that goes directly into the rail on here so that you can slide this up and down. One thing you want to note is you want your width here to be even. So if you find that, for instance, if I turn this collar this way, I'm at like 9 over here, but I'm at 10 over here. So I want to make sure that this is straight, and then I'm at, for this shirt, it's going to be about 9.5 on either side of my shirt. And that will help basically square up my shirt so that I know where to put my decal. So if I want my decal 3 inches below this top collar seam here, I'm at 1 here, so I'm gonna go 2, 3, 4. So I really want my decal actually down here, just like this. And then I can use these numbers here to center it. So in both cases, it's just a little bit over 9, just like that. Now I'm going to slide this up just a bit so I can add those pieces of painter's tape like I mentioned before, because I don't want to lose the placing of my decal here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to remove the whole ruler, and then I'm going to carefully pick this up. I'm going to pull out the parchment paper, place that back down, and this is where our decal should go. All right, here we have it on the kid's shirt. I've got everything aligned. So my crossbar is about 7.5 inches on either side here. I've got my arrows lined up here. On a kid's t-shirt, you basically want the decal about 2 inches below. So I've got one 2 inches below because I've got my collar set at that 1 inch mark here. And then I've centered my decal here, so I've got about 3.5 inches on each side of my decal. So I can go ahead and tape this and put it right into my heat press. Here it is set up for the onesie. Normally I wouldn't use such a big piece of parchment paper, but that's what I have cut for this tutorial. You'll see that top collar plate arrows, the collar plate here is so small, so it doesn't line up very nicely here, but I did try and make these even here. And then you'll see that I'm about 4.5 inches on either side of the crossbar here. For the t-shirt decal, again, about 1 inch down. And then on either side here, I have it at about 2.5 inches on either side of that crossbar. So again, add a little piece of tape, pull out that parchment paper and press. And then I have it set up for this racer back tee. Now, there's no collar plate like a normal shirt here, so I tried to just line up these arrows kind of the best I could in the most even way I could. Came straight down the shirt, added the crossbar. It's a little over 8.5 inches on either side here, so I've got this centered. And then for my decal, like I said earlier, I think 2 inches below the collar here versus 3 is a little bit better. And then I have it at about 4.5 on either side of this ruler here. And this is about as good as I think I can do with this shirt with this ruler. So to add your pocket decal, it comes with this extra piece here. The problem is for me is that it doesn't tell me which of these squares to use. So I have to kind of just guess. So maybe I'm like, let's see, I would probably put a little piece of parchment under here, but I don't have that for here. So let's say I think, oh, maybe that would work. So then I'd want to find the X and Y axis. So I'm 3 inches over here and I'm 5 inches over here. This is kind of hard to read because these two clear rulers are stacked. So I find these numbers a little difficult to read. So I would say, okay, I'm always going to have it 3 inches over, 5 inches here. This is up to the top of this ruler here. And that's just where I'm going to put pocket decals for every shirt. In the instructions, it just says, note those numbers for future use. I don't know if that changes based on the size of the shirt. If I'm making a much smaller shirt, is that still where it goes? If I'm making a much larger shirt, is that still where it goes? I'm not particularly sure how helpful this piece is. If you've used this ruler and you have a better way to do this, I would love to hear it in the comments because I'm not finding this particularly helpful. Overall, this is a really high quality ruler. You can tell that it's well made. It has these nice little bumpers on the bottom so that everything sits really nicely on your garment. The coloring of the markings is very bright and you can read it, especially if you're using dark colors. If you're using lighter colors, and again, if you have some vision problems, this orange might be a little bit hard to read. So just keep that in mind. I think it's very easy to read on dark fabrics. I found it a little difficult to read on that pink fabric because it's really not that different visually from the orange markings on here. But I think that if putting it on the black kids shirt, totally fine, worked really well. But I don't know if this is the ruler for me. I feel like it is a little bit complicated, a little bit fussy. I do see professionals on YouTube though using it all the time, so maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe it is for you. Maybe it's something that you want to look into more. I think that the alignment part of the just for aligning decals works really well. This logo piece I'm just not quite sure of. So if you've used this logo piece in the past, please let me know in the comments if I'm doing something wrong, because of course I want to make the best videos I can, and I'm just not quite sure I'm using this piece correctly. And the instructions are very minimal, and I just don't feel like they gave me the best instructions on how to use this. So if you have better advice, go ahead and leave that in the comments for me. Now let's move on to what I think is the knockoff version of the T-square ruler. So this is cheaper, but you'll see why. So to start, the T-square, it has that nice T-shaped piece, makes it very easy to put it down on your shirt. This has it in two separate pieces. So we have the piece that goes straight down, and then here on the back, you can see here in the overhead shot, there is like a little frame here, and that goes over the top here, and it slides in to create that T-shaped piece. Like with every ruler I tested, the instructions for this one were not thorough enough, so I'm guessing how to use this. So basically I have the bottom or the top of the ruler, basically the top of the actual ruler part here aligned with the bottom edge of the collar, because I know I want 3 inches down, and that seemed to be a good place to put it. Again, this has the frame on the back, so I'm just gonna go ahead and set that on the top. I have no idea what these ruler measurements are for, but we're just gonna cover them up with this top ruler. Now there's no arrows like on the other one, but there are measurements going out here. So I actually have that pretty straight because right here I'm going to 7 to 7 to these sleeve seams. Now I want you to take a look at this measurement here on the top. We've got 0 going out to 8 inches, and we've got 1 to 43 centimeters. Why? I feel like this is a complete misprint or misdesign. If you're using centimeters, you're not going to be able to know like whether or not this is even on both sides. I feel like this needs to start at 0 and go out to, what, 21 centimeters or whatever on each side. This is very silly to me that they have misprinted this here. So we're gonna go ahead and work in inches. Thankfully I work in inches, so I'm guessing that this is about right because I've got a little over 7 inches on both sides here to these sleeve seams. Then I've got the crossbar piece. But guess what? It doesn't go to the edge of my shirt here. So like with the other one, I was trying to get this centerpiece aligned by going out to the edges of my shirt. This crossbar is not long enough for a medium unisex shirt. Kids shirt, you'll see, works fine. Onesie, great. Anything larger than maybe a small shirt here, this is not gonna work. So I'm kind of having to guess. I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is about the same amount of space, I guess. I don't know. This ruler is measured correctly though. We got 0 out to 8 inches and we've got 0 out to 21 centimeters. So this was numbered correctly. I'm not sure why this one wasn't. So really, I'm just not quite happy with the fact that this crossbar here is not long or wide enough to fit my shirt. So again, we want our decal to be about 3 inches down. So I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3. And then I'm gonna measure it out here so that I've got about the same on each side. So I've got a little over 4.5 inches on either side here. And then again, I will just put that tape here and go ahead and remove that parchment paper and press. Here it is on a kid's shirt. You can see here, this is nicer because it goes out to the edges of the shirt and I can tell that I'm at a little under 8 inches on both sides here. I've got my t-shirt decal about 2 inches below the collar for the kid's shirt. And then I've got it aligned about 3.5 inches on each side here. You can move this up so you can actually really see where you're aligning. But I'll pull that down so that you can see that I have this in the right spot. And then here we have it on the onesie. So again, I'm just not even quite sure. So I've got a maybe 7.25 up here. I'm a little under, close to 5.5 on either side here. I've got my decal 1 inch below here, and then I'm gonna center it so that it's about 2.5 inches on either side of our center here. All right, then we got this wild card sort of racerback tank here. I'm not really sure what this is measuring, but I'm about 6 inches to each of these side seams here, so we're gonna go with that. Again, not wide enough here, but I've got a little bit of overlap on each side. And then, like I said before, with this racerback, I think 2 inches from the top here, so I've got that set there. And then I can center it here to be about 4.5 inches on either side on this crossbar. And you can also see here that this is a little wobbly. The T-square, this sits on either side of this piece. It has these 2 pieces out here, whereas the T-square actually sits within a rail and it's much more sturdy. And while we're looking at this, there is nothing here to do a pocket. So we're gonna skip the pocket section for this one because there is no way that I see here to be able to use a pocket decal. Overall, I give this ruler a I feel like they have this printing error on there. It's not particularly sturdy. I like on the T-squared at least where that top crossbar piece is attached to the ruler. Having this in 3 separate pieces makes it just even more unwieldy. I really do, however, love the numbering on this one. It's bright, it's vivid, and it shows up really well on dark or light fabrics because it has the background here of the yellow and then the dark colored numbers, and then it also has these bright yellow lines here. It just makes it easy to use on any color of fabric, which I really appreciate. Some of the reviews, however, say that these markings start to wear off really quickly. I've obviously not used these rulers enough to start getting to that point, but it is something to be aware of. All right, we are on to our last ruler. Thank you for sticking with me. I really wanted this to be an in-depth review, but I know it is a lot of information about rulers. So this final ruler, this logo placement guide, is just an L-shaped piece of acrylic with black markings on here. Now I will say these black markings are nearly impossible to see on dark shirts. So if you're gonna use this on dark shirts, don't. It's just not gonna work for you. So again, the instructions for these, incredibly unhelpful. So lining this up is a little tricky, so I can still barely see the line I ironed here earlier. So I'm gonna go ahead and place this on the center line. And I'm gonna use this men's medium because it's a unisex and I'm guessing that's closer to a men's size than a women's size. So I'm lining that line up on my center line here. So this is the center line, this medium men's medium, which it also has meeting up with a women's 2X, which the sizing on that just alone makes me go, no. A women's extra large, double extra large is not the same as a men's medium. Those numbers are not my favorite there. And then it wants me to align these numbers based on size at the top seam. But does it want me to align it at the top seam underneath it on the corner? So I'm gonna go on the edge here, which means that I'm moving this all the way up to this men's medium to here. Just like this. And then I wanna center my image here. And I'm gonna have to reline this up again just to make sure I'm in the right place. And I'm gonna guess where the center of my pocket decal is. We're gonna call it, sure, right there. I'm gonna remove this, and this is not right. This is absolutely way too close to this sleeve. It's like to the armpit. I mean, like if I was gonna place it, I would be like here, and it wants it like here. So I don't know about this guy. I just don't think that this is a very normal shirt. I mean, like everyone out there is using Bella Canvas tees. It's not like this is some weird sizing. This is a perfectly, like this, I'm a unisex medium. This fits me nicely. And so just, I mean, I don't know. I don't love it. It doesn't put this where I think it should be. It also has this weird sizing with the men's matching up with the women's double X2, and then up here a men's is a ladies large, a men's medium is a ladies large. So that seems correct. This seems crazy sauce. So overall, do I like this one? I do not, and I do not recommend that you buy it. So I have it linked below, but you know, so you can check it out, but not a fan. So when it all comes down to it, which of these rulers is my favorite? Now I have to say I would put my decal kind of where I thought it would go, and almost always I was pretty dead on. So for me, I'm gonna continue to eyeball it. I just think I have the magical ability to be able to see where something should go on a shirt. But if that's not you, then I think these plastic rulers are my favorite. They're inexpensive, they're easy to use. The extra step of having to press the garment is a bit annoying, but overall, I just found them just so much easier to use than these other fancier options. If you want a more advanced ruler set, then I think the T-square is it. I would definitely get that over the Upthou, even with the price difference, just because that center crossbar is not wide enough to be the right width of most shirts. The much wider crossbar here, let's see, I can show you the two bars. Like, it just makes a huge difference on being able to line things up quickly. That being said, not sure about this piece. I really want somebody to comment below and be like, you're totally using it wrong, because I really would like to know if this is better than I think it is. And then this little guy, yeah, he's going in the trash. I did not find that I could get that decal anywhere close to where I thought was appropriate using this little ruler, so goodbye him. Again, I found this one a little complicated, and it didn't really tell me what was correct. It just told me like, oh, I'm gonna put it at 3.5. What does that mean? I don't know. So honestly, I found this little guy the best. So you line it up like you would, like I showed you, and then just put the decal below it. It's a little hard to tell if you have a round decal because you don't have the, you know, the XY axis to kind of line it up, but honestly, this was just so much easier. And we have come to the end of our great ruler battle. I think these little plastic rulers won. If you have any questions about any of these rulers, and you probably do, I would be happy to answer those down in the comments. If you have tips and tricks for using some of these other rulers that you're like, Corey, you were totally doing that wrong, I do want to know. I want to know how to use these rulers. I want people to know how to use them. So please leave that down in the comments as well. If you found this video helpful, as always, I would appreciate a like. If you want more tutorials for Cricut, sublimation, laser, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next week.